Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku lost someone important. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The train ride from Mizudafu was a rhythmic lullaby that Izuku Midoriya usually found comforting, but today, it felt agonizingly slow. The friction of the wheels against the track hummed a low, vibrating note that resonated in his chest, competing with the frantic beating of his heart. It wasn't anxiety, at least, not the kind he was used to facing villains or taking exams. It was anticipation. It had been weeks since the dormitory system, the Heights Alliance, had been implemented. Weeks since the Kamino Ward incident. Weeks since the symbol of peace, All Might, had pointed a finger at a camera and, by extension, at Izuku, and declared, "You are next." The weight of the world was heavier now. The air in the classroom felt thinner, the training harder, the shadows in the alleys darker. But for the next 24 hours, Izuku wasn't the ninth holder of One for All. He wasn't the problem child of Class 1A. He wasn't Deku. He was just Izuku. And he was going home. He adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack, his fingers brushing against the rough fabric. The weekend pass in his pocket felt like a golden ticket. Aizawa-sensei had been reluctant, citing safety protocols, but All Might had intervened. "The boy needs a hot meal that isn't cafeteria curry, Shota. He needs his mother." The train hissed to a halt at his station. The doors slid open, spilling the cool, late autumn air into the carriage. Izuku stepped out, taking a deep breath. The smell was different here. It didn't smell like the sterile polish of the UA hallways or the ozone of the training grounds. It smelled like damp pavement, roasting chestnuts from a street vendor, and the faint, salty tang of the distant sea. It smelled like the past. The walk to the apartment complex was etched into his muscle memory. He navigated the streets without thinking, his red sneakers scuffing familiar cracks in the sidewalk. He passed the park where he and Kaken used to catch bugs, before the quirks, before the bullying, before the rivalry became a complex web of resentment and respect. He passed the convenience store where he used to buy hero trading cards, praying for an All Might holographic. When the apartment building came into view, a nondescript block of beige concrete and iron railings, Izuku felt his shoulders drop 3 inches. It wasn't a fortress. It didn't have blast walls or biometric sensors. It was just a building. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, the metal steps clanging softly under his feet. He stood before door 203, his hand hovering over the handle. He didn't even have to knock. The door swung open before he could touch it. Izuku! Inko Midoriya looked exactly the same, and yet, she looked smaller than he remembered. Maybe it was because he had grown, his muscles denser, his posture straighter. Or maybe it was the worry lines etched deeper around her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she reached for him. "Mom," Izuku breathed out, the word feeling like a release valve. She pulled him into a hug that defied her small stature. It was a crushing, desperate embrace. She smelled of laundry detergent and the savory, sweet aroma of dashi. Izuku buried his face in her shoulder, feeling the tension of the last few months melt away. He wasn't a hero here. He was just her son. "I'm home," he mumbled into her cardigan. "Welcome home," she sobbed, pulling back to cup his face. Her eyes were already wet, fat tears spilling over her lashes. She scanned him frantically, her gaze darting to his arms, covered by his long sleeves, checking for new casts, new bandages. Finding none, she let out a watery laugh. "You're okay. You're really here." "I'm okay, Mom. Really. Come in. Come in. Don't stand in the cold." She ushered him inside, fussing over his backpack, taking his coat. "I made tea. And I bought the expensive pork cutlets. The thick ones. I'm making katsudon, your favorite." The apartment was warm. It was a stifling, cozy warmth that fogged up the windows. The television was playing a low-volume variety show, the laughter of the audience a familiar background noise. Izuku walked to his room, sliding the door open. It was a shrine. Posters of All Might in his Silver Age, Golden Age, and Bronze Age costumes plastered every inch of the wall. Action figures lined the shelves in precise formation. It was a room frozen in time, belonging to a quirkless boy who dreamed of the impossible. Izuku set his bag down on the bed. He picked up a figure, all might, fists raised in a Texas smash. He looked at the plastic smile. It felt different now. Before, this smile was a promise. Now, knowing the frail, skeletal man behind the muscle form, knowing the burden of the torch that had been passed, the smile felt like a mask. Izuku? Inko called from the kitchen. The tea is ready. He put the figure down. Coming. The kitchen was the heart of the Midoriya household. Izuku sat at the small round table, wrapping his scarred hands around a ceramic cup of green tea. Inko was a whirlwind of motion at the stove, breading the pork cutlets with practiced efficiency. So, Inko said, her back to him, though he could hear the smile in her voice. How are the dorms? Are you eating enough? Is the bedding warm? I heard the winters near UA can be harsh because of the elevation. It's fine, Mom, Izuku said, blowing on his tea. The rooms are big. Everyone is really nice. We take turns cooking sometimes. Ida, he's the class rep. He makes sure we're all studying. That's good. That's good. She paused, the sizzling of the frying pan filling the silence. Then she turned, wiping her hands on her apron. Her expression was softer, tinged with a lingering sadness. And, All Might? Is he treating you well? Izuku looked down at his tea, watching the steam curl up. He knew what she was really asking. Is he keeping you safe? He is, Izuku said firmly. He's doing his best, Mom. He really cares. Not just about me, but about everyone. Inko sighed, sitting down opposite him as the pork fried. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. Her skin was soft, uncalloused, starkly different from his own rough, scarred palms. I was so scared, Izuku, she whispered. When I saw the news. Kamino, the kidnapping. I thought I was going to lose you. I know I promised to support you. I know I said I wouldn't get in your way, but I am your mother. It is my job to worry. I know, Izuku said, flipping his hand to squeeze hers. I'm sorry I make you worry. Don't apologize for being brave, she said fiercely, her eyes shining. Just promise me. Promise me you'll come home. No matter how fast you have to run back to me. I promise. The moment was shattered not by a sound, but by a sensation. It started as a vibration in the floorboards, rippling up through the legs of the table. The tea in Izuku's cup rippled, concentric circles distorting his reflection. Then came the sound. Boom. It wasn't the sharp crack of Bakugo's explosions. This was deeper, a bass-heavy thud that felt like the earth itself had cracked a rib. The windows of the apartment rattled violently, and the lights flickered. Izuku was on his feet instantly. The chair screeched against the floor. Mom, get down! What? Another impact. Closer this time. The entire building lurched to the side. The sound of tearing metal and crumbling concrete screamed through the air. In the kitchen, the cabinet doors swung open, spilling plates and bowls onto the floor in a cacophony of shattering ceramic. Villain, Izuku muttered, his eyes sharpening. The green electricity of full cowl sparked around his skin, his body flooding with power. It wasn't a question. That specific cadence of destruction was man-made. Izuku! Inko shrieked, clutching the table as the floor tilted crazily. It's okay. I'm here. Izuku vaulted over the table, grabbing his mother. He shielded her with his body as the ceiling plaster cracked, raining white dust down on them. Outside the window, a plume of black smoke rose against the Sunday sky. Through the glass, Izuku saw a figure floating in the air. No, not floating. Standing on a pillar of debris that was actively assembling itself. A man in a ragged trench coat, screaming incoherently, waving his arms like a conductor. Every time he gestured, the buildings around him groaned and warped. Matter manipulation? Telekinesis? No, he's destabilizing the structural integrity, Izuku analyzed in a split second. We have to go, Izuku said, his voice dropping into the command tone he used in hero training. Mom, we need to evacuate. Now. He guided her toward the door, keeping one arm wrapped tight around her shoulders. The hallway of the apartment complex was chaos. Doors were flung open. Their neighbor, Mrs. Tanaka, was screaming for her cat. Mr. Sato from upstairs was stumbling down the stairs, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. The stairs are compromising. Izuku yelled over the roar of the destruction. Everyone! Stay close to the walls. Don't push. The building gave another violent lurch. The villain outside let out a roar that shattered the remaining windows in the complex. I hate it. I hate the silence. Make it loud. Make it all fall down. The villain screamed. His voice was amplified, likely a support item or a secondary quirk. Izuku gritted his teeth. He's not targeting anyone specific. He's just destroying everything. Izuku, look out! Inko screamed. A section of the ceiling in the hallway, a heavy slab of concrete and rebar, sheared off directly above them. Izuku didn't think. He moved. Smash! He threw his right arm upward, 5% output surging to 8%. His fist connected with the falling concrete. The impact jarred his bones, but the slab shattered, turning into harmless gravel that rained down on his shoulders. Go! Run! Izuku shouted to the neighbors, frozen in fear. Get to the street! Move! They scrambled, spurred into action by the boy's command. Izuku turned to his mother. She was staring at him, eyes wide with terror, but also with awe. Mom, you too. Go with Mrs. Tanaka. I have to help Mr. Sato, his leg is bad. No! Izuku, come with me. Inko grabbed his sleeve. I'll be right behind you, he promised, giving her a gentle shove toward the stairs. I just need to make sure everyone is out. It's what a hero does. Inko hesitated, then nodded, tears streaming down her face. Right behind me. She turned and ran, joining the flow of panicked residents heading for the emergency exit. Izuku spun around, sprinting back toward the end of the hallway where an elderly couple was trapped behind a jammed door. He kicked the door open, controlled power, don't break the frame, and ushered them out. He carried a crying child down the stairs, handing him off to a police officer who had just arrived at the entrance. The scene outside was bedlam. Police cruisers were screeching to a halt, sirens wailing. But the villain, who Izuku now recognized from the police files he studied as the deconstructionist, a C-rank villain usually, now clearly boosted by something, likely the drug trigger, was causing havoc on a massive scale. He was touching the support pillars of the complex, turning the concrete into sand. Stay back! The police shouted. The whole structure is unstable. Izuku landed in the courtyard, dust coating his green hair. He scanned the crowd of evacuees huddled behind the police barricade. He saw Mrs. Tanaka. He saw Mr. Sato. He saw the couple from 204. He didn't see Inko. Ice flooded his veins, colder than any winter wind. He sprinted to Mrs. Tanaka. Where is she? Where is my mom? Mrs. Tanaka looked up, face streaked with soot. I thought she was with you. We got separated on the stairs when the second tremor hit. The smoke. I couldn't see. Izuku whipped his head around to the building. The apartment complex, his home, was groaning. The west wing, where the stairwell was, had partially collapsed inward, blocking the lower exit. Mom, Izuku whispered, then he screamed it. MOM. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the pros. He activated full cowl, green lightning crackling violently around him, and launched himself back toward the dying building. Kid! Stop! A policeman shouted. Izuku ignored him. He leaped to the second-floor balcony, grabbing the iron railing. It bent under his grip, hot from the friction of bending metal. He vaulted into the corridor. Mom! Can you hear me? The air was thick with pulverized drywall. It coated his throat, making him cough. The hallway was tilted at a 45-degree angle. Doors were jambs, floors were walls. Izuku. The voice was faint. Weak. It was coming from below. The floor of the hallway had given way. Izuku scrambled to the edge of the jagged hole, peering down into the darkness of the first floor. There, amidst a tangle of rebar and broken furniture, was Inko. She was lying on her side. A massive support beam, a thick pillar of steel and concrete, had fallen. It lay across her lower back and legs, pinning her to the ground. MOM. Izuku dropped down, landing heavily. He slipped on the debris, scrambling on hands and knees to reach her. I'm here! I'm here, Mom! His hands hovered over her, terrified to touch her, terrified to hurt her. Her face was pale, coated in gray dust. A trickle of blood ran from her hairline. She opened her eyes. They were hazy, unfocused. Izuku? Yeah, it's me. It's okay. I'm going to get you out. Izuku grabbed the beam. It was huge. Immense. Part of the main load-bearing structure, one for all. Full cowl. 10%, he gritted his teeth, his muscles seizing as he pulled. The beam groaned. It shifted an inch. Inko let out a sharp, strangled cry of pain. Izuku stopped instantly. I'm sorry! I'm sorry! It's heavy. She whispered. I know. I'm going to lift it. I need better leverage. Izuku's mind was racing. If I lift it straight up, the debris on top of it might shift and crush her. If I break it, the vibration might collapse the ceiling. Think. The building shook again. Debris rained down around them. The villain outside was still attacking. The structure was dying, Inko said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. You need to go. Shut up. Izuku snapped, panic making his voice shrill. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. I'm saving you. He jammed his boots into the floor, getting a grip. 20%. The lightning flared brighter, searing the air. Izuku roared, pulling with everything he had. The veins in his neck bulged. His bones creaked under the strain. The beam lifted. 2 inches. 3. Crawl, Mom! Crawl out, Inko tried. She clawed at the ground, her fingers scraping against the tiles. But she didn't move. She couldn't move. My legs. She gasped. I can't feel them. Izuku's heart stopped. Spinal injury. Crushed pelvis. If I move her wrong, I kill her. If I don't move her, the building kills her. It's okay, Izuku hyperventilated, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the dust. I'll carry you. I'll lift this, and I'll scoop you up with my legs and, crack, the ceiling above them buckled. A massive slab of the second floor began to sag, held up only by a few twisting rebar rods. Izuku, look at me. No! I'm looking at the beam. He strained, his grip slipping on the rough concrete. His fingernails broke, bleeding onto the stone. I can do this. All Might could do this. You are not All Might, Inko said, her voice finding a sudden, surprising strength. Izuku froze, looking down at her. Inko smiled. It was the same smile she gave him when he was 4 and quirkless. The same smile she gave him when he got into UA. It was a smile of absolute, unconditional, terrifying love. You are Izuku, she said softly. My baby. My hero. Mom, please. The ceiling is falling, Izuku. If you stay, you'll die too. I don't care. Izuku screamed, the sound tearing his throat raw. I'm not leaving you. I promised. I promised to run back to you. And you did, she whispered. She reached up, her hand trembling. She brushed the dirt off his cheek. Her thumb traced the freckles there. You came back. That's enough. The rebar above groaned, a high-pitched whine of metal stretching to its breaking point. Go, Inko commanded. It wasn't a request. It was a mother protecting her child. No, Izuku. Live. Her eyes locked onto his. Live and help people. Save them. With a smile, the building gave a final, mournful lurch. The villain outside landed a catastrophic blow to the foundation. Gravity won. The ceiling gave way. In that fraction of a second, time dilated. Izuku saw the slab descending. He saw the physics of it. It was tons of concrete. Even at 100%, he couldn't catch it without the shockwave killing her instantly. He had choices. None of them ended with her alive. But he had one choice that ended with him alive. Inko shoved his leg. It was a weak, pathetic shove, but the intent was clear. Get away. Izuku screamed, a sound devoid of humanity, and scrambled backward, not by choice, but by the sheer instinct of self-preservation that his mother had just ignited in him. He leaped back just as the world came crashing down. The slab slammed into the ground with the force of a meteor. The impact threw Izuku across the room. He slammed into the far wall, the breath knocked out of him. Then, there was darkness. And silence. The Sunday silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was a physical weight pressing against his eardrums. The dust was so thick it was like being underwater. "Mom?" The word was a croak. He crawled forward. His leg was dragging. He had twisted it in the fall. He moved toward where she had been. There was nothing but a mountain of rubble. "Mom!" He started digging. He grabbed jagged rocks and threw them aside. He didn't use one for all. He couldn't feel the power anymore. He couldn't feel anything. He just dug. His fingers were raw. Blood smeared on the gray stones. He dug until his nails were gone. He dug until he hit something soft. A piece of fabric. A pink cardigan. "Mom!" He pulled frantically. He uncovered a hand. It was small. Pale. Still, he grabbed it. It was warm, but fading fast. He squeezed it. "Mom?" "Squeeze back. Please. Please squeeze back." There was no pressure. No twitch. No pulse. Izuku sat there in the dark, under the ruins of his childhood home, holding his mother's dead hand. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Voices shouted. "Hero team arrived. All Might is here. All Might is here." The phrase that usually brought hope felt like an insult. "You're late," Izuku thought, though his mouth didn't move. "You're too late." The rubble above shifted. Light pierced the gloom. A massive hand ripped the ceiling away like it was cardboard. Young Midoriya, All Might, stood there, framed by the sunlight, his signature smile absent, replaced by a look of sheer panic. He was in his muscle form, steaming, majestic. Izuku didn't look up. He stared at the hand in his grasp. "I am here," All Might announced, reaching down. "I am here to save you." Izuku looked up then. His face was streaked with mud and blood. His eyes, usually so bright, so full of green sparks, were dull. Flat. "Dead." "She's not," Izuku whispered. All Might froze. He followed Izuku's gaze. He saw the hand. The symbol of peace deflated, not physically, but spiritually. His hand lowered slowly. "My boy." Izuku didn't cry. He felt like he had cried all the tears he was allotted for a lifetime in those few seconds before the collapse. Now he felt hollow. He felt like a casing, a suit with no pilot. He looked at the rubble that buried the only person who loved him before he had power. The only person who loved him simply because he existed. The silence returned. It wrapped around Izuku, cold and suffocating. He carefully, tenderly, placed Inko's hand back onto the pile of stone. He stood up on shaky legs. His bones rattled. He walked past All Might without a word. "Young Midoriya, wait! You need medical attention." Izuku kept walking. He walked out of the ruins of the apartment complex. He walked past the cheering crowds who saw All Might and assumed the day was saved. He walked past the police who were dragging the unconscious villain away in quirk-suppressing cuffs. He stopped only when he saw Bakugo. Katsuki Bakugo was standing by the police line, his face unusually pale. He had likely run here from his own house nearby. He was staring at the ruins, then at Izuku. For once, Bakugo didn't yell. He didn't scoff. He looked at the blood on Izuku's hands. He looked at the emptiness behind Izuku's eyes. "Deku." Bakugo breathed, his voice trembling. "Where is Auntie?" Izuku stopped. He looked at Bakugo, but he looked through him. "She's gone, Kaken." The words were simple. Factual. Devoid of inflection. Izuku turned his gaze back to the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in hues of bruised purple and blood red. "Save everyone with a smile," All Might had said. Izuku tried to summon the feeling. He tried to summon the smile, but the hearth was cold. The fire was out, and for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted his mom. He took a step forward, and then, finally, his body gave up. He collapsed onto the asphalt, the darkness rising up to claim him, welcoming him into a silence that would last a very, very long time. The world did not end with a bang. For Izuku Midoriya, the bang had been the previous day, the collapse of the apartment, the scream of tearing metal, the final structural groan of the building that had been his childhood universe. The world ended with a beep. 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 It was a rhythmic, synthetic pulse that cut through the gray fog in his mind. Izuku opened his eyes. The ceiling was white, not the warm, cream-colored white of his bedroom ceiling, which had a small water stain in the corner shaped like a rabbit. This was a sterile, aggressive white. Fluorescent lights hummed with a sound that felt like sandpaper against his brain. He was in a hospital bed. For a terrifying, cruel second, his brain supplied a comforting lie. You were training. You pushed one for all too hard again. Recovery girl passed you up. Mom will be here soon with a change of clothes and a scolding. Then, the memory hit him. It didn't hit like a punches he was used to. It hit like a cleaver, severing the before from the after, the dust. The weight of the hand in his. The silence. Izuku sat up. His body protested. His ribs ached, wrapped tightly in bandages. His fingers, the ones he had used to dig through concrete until the nails tore away, were heavily gauzed, looking like white boxing gloves. Young Midoriya? The voice was large, but it was trying to be small. It sounded like a thunderstorm trying to whisper. Izuku turned his head slowly. The movement felt mechanical, like a rusted gear grinding into place. Sitting in a plastic chair beside the bed was All Might. But not the All Might the world saw. This was Toshinori Yagi. He was slumped forward, his skeletal elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together so tightly the knuckles were white. He looked old. Older than he had ever looked, even after Kamino. All Might, Izuku said. His voice didn't sound like his own. It was dry, cracked, and devoid of inflection. It sounded like dead leaves skittering across pavement. Toshinori started, then stopped. He unclasped his hands, then reclasped them. The symbol of peace, the man who always had a catchphrase, who always knew what to say to inspire hope, was drowning in the silence. The doctors say you have 3 broken ribs. Severe abrasion on your hands. Exhaustion. But you will heal. You will heal. The words hung in the air, grotesque and absurd. Where is she? Izuku asked. Toshinori flinched. It was a microscopic movement, a twitch of the eye, but Izuku saw it. With his new, detached clarity, he saw everything. Izuku, my boy, where is she? She is, at the morgue. The arrangements, your aunt, Mitsuki Bakugo, she is handling the immediate paperwork. Since you are a minor and... Toshinori's voice broke. He looked down at the linoleum floor. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Izuku stared at him. He waited for the anger. He waited for the tears. He waited for the screaming grief that he had seen in movies. But there was nothing. Just static. A low-level, white noise that filled his head, muffling the world. It was as if his emotional nerve endings had been cauterized. Okay, Izuku said. Toshinori looked up, alarmed by the calmness. Okay, can I go? Go? Young Midoriya, you need to rest. You've been through a trauma that... I have to go to school, Izuku said. He looked at the clock on the wall. It's Monday. We have hero basic training today. Izuku, no. No school. Not today. Not for a while. Toshinori stood up and reached out, placing a large, bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. You need to grieve. Izuku looked at the hand on his shoulder. He remembered how that hand had offered him a hair strand on a beach. Eat this. He remembered how that hand had ruffled his hair after the sports festival. Now, the touch felt heavy. It felt like a chain. I don't know how, Izuku whispered. Toshinori pulled him into a hug. It was awkward, bony, and smelled of cheap hospital coffee and despair. I know. I know. We'll figure it out together. Izuku didn't hug back. He couldn't. His arms were heavy, and his hands were bandaged, and inside his chest, the heart that usually beat with the rhythm of plus ultra was beating a slow, steady, hollow drum. The funeral took place 3 days later. The weather, adhering to a cruel cliché, was torrential. The sky was a bruised charcoal, dumping sheets of freezing rain onto the city of Muzurifu. The cemetery was a sea of black umbrellas, bobbing like dark jellyfish in the gloom. Izuku stood at the front. He wasn't wearing his UA uniform. He wore a simple black suit that Mitsuki had bought for him yesterday because his old one, the one he wore for middle school graduation, was burned in. The fire that followed the collapse. The suit was slightly too big. He felt like a child playing dress-up. Beside him, Mitsuki Bakugo was unraveling. The woman who was usually loud, brash, and invincible was hanging on to her husband, Masaru, as if he were the only thing tethering her to the earth. She wasn't weeping, she was keening. It was a low, animalistic sound of pain that cut through the sound of the rain. "Inko, oh God, Inko!" She sobbed, burying her face in Masaru's coat. Izuku watched her. He felt a vague sense of guilt that he wasn't crying. Why wasn't he crying? That was his thing. He was the crybaby. He was Deku, the boy who cried when he was happy, when he was sad, when he ate good food. But his eyes were dry. They burned, itching with the need to release something, but the connection between his eyes and his heart had been severed. Behind him, a small group of people stood. All Might, in a massive black trench coat, holding an umbrella that looked like a cocktail stick in his hands. Principal Nizu, Aizawa-sensei, his hair plastered to his face, looking even more tired than usual, and the students, Class 1A had come. They stood in a phalanx of support, dressed in their uniforms with black armbands. They looked terrified. They had faced villains. They had faced the League. They had faced death in combat, but this was different. This was domestic death. This was the death of a mother. It was a quiet, creeping horror that quirks couldn't punch away. Izuku felt their eyes on his back. He could feel Uraraka's watery gaze. He could feel Ida's stiff, respectful posture. He looked at the altar. The photo Mitsuki had chosen was from the year Izuku got into UA. Inko was smiling, tears in her eyes, holding up a cake she had baked to celebrate. She looked so happy. So proud. "I didn't save her," the static in his head whispered. "I lifted the beam, but I didn't save her," the priest chanted the sutras. The smell of incense mixed with the smell of wet earth and rain. It was a sensory overload that made Izuku nauseous. Then, it was time to place the flowers. Izuku stepped forward. He held a white chrysanthemum. His bandaged fingers fumbled with the stem. He placed it on the altar. He bowed. 2 claps. A prayer. "I'm sorry, Mom," he thought. "I'm sorry I'm not crying. I'm sorry I'm broken." He stepped back. Mitsuki went next. Then Masaru. Then Bakugo. Katsuki Bakugo walked up to the altar. He wasn't wearing his school uniform. He was in a black suit that fit him perfectly, tailored and sharp. He didn't have an umbrella. The rain soaked his ash-blonde hair, plastering it down, stripping away his usual spiky silhouette. He placed the flower. He stood there for a long time. Longer than was customary. Izuku watched him. He saw Bakugo's shoulders shaking. Just once. A violent shudder that he suppressed instantly. When Bakugo turned around, his eyes were red-rimmed. He looked at Izuku. For years, that look had held contempt, arrogance, or competitive fury. Today, it held fear. And guilt. Bakugo walked past Izuku. He didn't shoulder-check him. He didn't sneer. "Deku." He stopped, just for a heartbeat, beside Izuku. "She made the best katsudon," Bakugo said. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "Yeah," Izuku replied. "She did." Bakugo opened his mouth as if to say more, his jaw working, teeth clenching. But the words died in his throat. He looked down at his own hands, hands that created explosions, hands that were designed for destruction, and then shoved them into his pockets and walked away into the rain. The service ended. The attendees began to disperse, the sea of black umbrellas breaking apart. Midoriya-chan, Ochako Uraraka was there. Her eyes were puffy, her nose red. She held her umbrella over him, shielding him from the rain. "We're all here for you. You know that, right?" Izuku looked at the rain dripping off the edge of her umbrella. Drip. 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 "Thank you, Uraraka-san," he said. "If you need anything, to talk or just to sit, I'm okay." "You don't have to be okay," she said, her voice trembling. "It's okay not to be okay." Izuku looked at her. He appreciated the sentiment. He knew she meant it. But it felt like she was speaking a foreign language. "I have to go," Izuku said. "Aizawa-sensei is waiting." He walked away, leaving her standing in the rain. He felt a phantom sensation in his hand, the feeling of dust and cold skin. He rubbed his bandaged thumb against his palm, trying to wipe it away, but the sensation was etched into his nerves. Since the apartment was a crime scene and structurally unsound, Izuku had no home. Technically, he could have stayed with the Bakugos. Mitsuki had offered, begging him through her tears to stay in his old guest room. Your family, Izuku! You can't be alone! But the thought of sleeping in that house, the house where he and Katsuki had grown up, the house that smelled like the same laundry detergent his mother used, was unbearable. It was too close to a life that no longer existed. So, the decision was made. He would move into Heights Alliance, the UA dorms, permanently. He was the first student to become a full-time resident with no guardians to visit on weekends. The car ride with Aizawa was silent. Shota Aizawa was not a man of small talk, and for that, Izuku was grateful. The hero drove with a steady, calming competence. The rhythmic thump-thump of the windshield wipers was the only sound. When they pulled up to the gates of UA, the massive barrier felt different. Before, it was a gateway to his dreams. Now, it was a cage. A safe cage, but a cage nonetheless. Midoriya, Aizawa said as he put the car in park. He didn't turn to look at Izuku. He kept his eyes on the windshield. I'm not going to give you a speech about moving on. That's illogical. You don't move on from this. You move with it. Izuku looked at his teacher. Move with it? It's a weight, Aizawa said, finally turning his dark, tired eyes to Izuku. Right now, it's crushing you. Eventually, you'll get strong enough to carry it. But you don't have to carry it alone. That's why we're here. I know, Izuku said automatically. It was the correct answer. Aizawa sighed. He knew the kid was shutting down. He had seen it in pros who lost partners. The 1,000-yard stare. The robotic compliance. Go inside. Your things, what we could salvage, have been sent to your room. Thank you, Sensei. Izuku got out of the car. He walked up the path to the 1A dormitory. The lights were on inside. He could see silhouettes moving in the common room. He hesitated at the door. He didn't want to go in. He didn't want the pity. He didn't want the whispers. He wanted to dissolve. He wanted to turn into mist and drift away, but he had nowhere else to go. He pushed the door open. The common room went silent instantly. It was uncanny. 19 heads turned in unison. Kaminari was mid-laugh, his mouth freezing in a rictus of joy that quickly faded. Ashido dropped a magazine. Midoriya! Kirishima was the first to move. He stepped forward, his face a mask of manly concern. Dude, welcome back. Hey, Izuku said. He kept his head down, watching his shoes on the hardwood floor. We made dinner, Sato said softly from the kitchen area. Beef stew. It's warm, thanks. I'm not hungry. You should eat, Ida said, stepping forward with his usual chopping motion, though it lacked its usual vigor. It was gentle, almost hesitant. Proper nutrition is essential for. I said I'm not hungry, Ida-kun, Izuku said. The tone wasn't angry. It was just dead. It cut Ida off effectively. I'm going to my room, Izuku said to the room at large. Please, don't worry about me. He walked past them. He felt their eyes clinging to him, sticky with concern. He knew they were texting each other right now. He knew they were having a silent meeting about how to handle the Deku situation. He reached the elevator and pressed the button. The doors slid shut, cutting off the view of his friends' worried faces. Room 203. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was exactly as he had left it last week. But on the floor, there were 3 cardboard boxes. Fragile was scrawled on the side in a policeman's handwriting. These were the salvaged items. Izuku sat on the bed. He looked around the room. It was a shrine. All Might was everywhere. A limited edition Silver Age poster above the desk. A Bronze Age action figure on the shelf. The bedsheets were All Might themed, red, white, and blue. The clock was All Might's face. The rug was the UA emblem. For his entire life, this room had been his sanctuary. It was the physical manifestation of his dream. Every item represented a moment where he had looked at the symbol of peace and thought, I can do it. I can be a hero too. Now, the room felt like a funhouse mirror. Izuku looked at the poster above his desk. All Might was smiling, giving a thumbs up. The caption read, "I am here." "You weren't," Izuku whispered. The words hung in the air, treasonous and true. He looked at the action figure. The one Inko had bought him for his 10th birthday. She had saved up for months to buy it because it was a rare import. She had presented it to him with that beaming, teary-eyed smile. "For my little hero!" A wave of nausea rolled over him. He couldn't breathe. The colors were too bright. The smiles were too wide. The room was mocking him. It was a museum of a boy who was dead. The Izuku who loved this merchandise, who muttered about quirk analysis, who looked at the world with stars in his eyes. That boy died under the rubble with his mother. "I can't," Izuku choked out. "I can't look at him." He stood up. He grabbed one of the empty cardboard boxes from the floor, one that had contained his salvaged clothes, and dumped the clothes onto the bed. He walked to the shelf. He grabbed the Bronze Age figure. He didn't handle it with the reverence of a collector. He threw it into the box. Thud. He grabbed the clock. Thud. He ripped the poster off the wall. The tape tore, leaving a jagged white mark on the paint. He didn't care. He crumpled the poster, a collector's item worth thousands of yen, and shoved it into the box. He moved faster. It became a frenzy. He stripped the sheets off the bed, balling them up and kicking them into the corner. He swept his arm across his desk, knocking pens, notebooks, and figurines into the box in a chaotic avalanche of plastic and paper. He was breathing hard, gasping for air, sweat beading on his forehead. Get him out. Get him out of here. He didn't hate All Might. He knew that logically. He knew Toshinori was grieving too. But the symbol, the smiling, invincible symbol of peace, that was a lie. And having that lie plastered on his walls while his mother lay in a cold drawer at the morgue was unbearable. He filled 3 boxes. He taped them shut with trembling hands. When he was done, the room was naked, the walls were bare beige. The shelves were empty wooden planks. The bed was just a mattress. It looked like a prison cell. Or a monk's quarters. It was perfect. Izuku sat on the bare mattress. The exertion had drained the last of his adrenaline. The static in his head grew louder. He looked at the 3 boxes of salvaged items from the apartment. He hadn't opened them yet. He reached for the nearest one. He cut the tape with a key. Inside, it smelled of smoke. He pulled out a photo album. The cover was singed. He opened it. Baby Izuku. Izuku entering kindergarten. Izuku and Inko at the park. Inko making a peace sign. He turned the page. There was a photo of him and Bakugo, age 4, before the quirks manifested. They were holding hands. Inko and Natsuki were in the background, laughing. He turned the page. A photo of Inko alone. She was looking at the camera, but not posing. She was caught in a moment of candid joy, laughing at something behind the lens. Izuku traced her face with his finger. "Mom," he whispered. The static spiked. It turned into a high-pitched whine. "Why didn't you move faster? Why did you hesitate? You have the strongest quirk in the world. You have the power of All Might, and you couldn't lift a rock." He slammed the album shut. He couldn't do this. Not yet. He pushed the box away. He curled up on the bare mattress, pulling his knees to his chest. He didn't have a blanket. He didn't care. The cold felt appropriate. A knock at the door. Izuku didn't answer. "Deku-kun?" It was Uraraka. Of course it was. She was the heart of the class. She was the one who always checked. "Go away," Izuku said. His voice was muffled by his knees. I brought you some tea," she said through the door. "And some mochi. I know you didn't eat dinner. I'm not hungry. Please, Deku-kun. Just let me come in for a second. I won't stay. I just want to see you." Izuku closed his eyes. He didn't want to be seen. But he knew Uraraka. She was stubborn. She wouldn't leave. "Fine," he said. "It's unlocked." The door opened slowly. Uraraka stepped in, holding a tray with a steaming mug and a small plate. She froze. She looked at the walls. The empty shelves. The boxes piled in the corner. The bare mattress. The room looked like it had been looted. "Deku-kun." Her eyes went wide. She looked at the boxes labeled All Might. She realized what he had done. You took everything down?" "It was too loud," Izuku said. He didn't look at her. He stared at the wall. Uraraka set the tray down on the empty desk. Her hands were shaking. She had expected sadness. She had expected tears. She hadn't expected this, erasure. She walked over to the bed. She sat down on the edge, leaving a respectful distance between them. Deku-kun, she said softly. She reached out. She wanted to touch his hand, to offer the physical comfort that had always worked between them. She wanted to ground him. Her fingertips grazed his shoulder. Izuku flinched. It was a violent, visceral reaction. He jerked away from her touch as if she were made of fire. He scrambled back against the headboard, his eyes wide, pupils dilated. Don't, he rasped. Uraraka recoiled, holding her hand to her chest. Hurt flashed across her face, followed immediately by guilt. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Don't touch me, Izuku said. He was breathing hard again. I wanted to comfort you. I don't deserve it, Izuku said. The words fell out of his mouth before he could stop them. What? Deku-kun, that's crazy. Of course you deserve comfort. You're a victim. A villain attacked your home. I was there, Izuku said. He looked at his hands, the bandaged, useless hands. I was right there. I had full call active. I was right next to her. It was a building collapse. You can't fight gravity. I have one for all. Izuku shouted. The sudden volume made Uraraka jump. I have the power to change the weather with a punch. I have the power that defeated All for One. And I couldn't save one person. He was shaking now. The static was screaming. I wasn't fast enough, he whispered, the anger draining away into exhaustion. I wasn't strong enough. I'm just a kid with a quirk he can't use. Uraraka looked at him. She saw the boy she admired. The boy who had saved her from the zero-pointer. The boy who had fought Todoroki to save his soul. But the light in his eyes, that emerald fire that always burned, no matter how beaten he was gone. It was extinguished. She realized then that the Izuku Midoriya she knew hadn't come back from that weekend pass. Izuku, she said, using his given name for the first time. He didn't react. I'm going to leave the tea, she said, her voice choking up. Please drink it. Please. She stood up. She walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the frame, hoping he would say something. Hoping he would say, Wait, Uraraka-san, I'm sorry, but he said nothing. She stepped out and closed the door. Inside the room, the silence rushed back in to fill the space she had left. Izuku looked at the tea. Steam curled off the surface. He didn't reach for it. He lay back down on the bare mattress. He stared at the blank, white ceiling. He focused on the hum of the ventilation system. Hum. It sounded like static. It was the only sound that made sense. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he didn't dream of being a hero. He didn't dream at all. He just drifted in the gray, waiting for a dawn that felt like it would never come. The alarm clock on the bedside table did not get the chance to ring. At 4:59 a.m., the digital display glowed a harsh, neon red in the darkness of the barren room. Izuku Midoriya lay perfectly still on his mattress, his eyes already open, fixed on the changing numbers. It flickered. 5 o'clock. His hand moved. It was a precise, economical motion, his finger depressing the button before the electronic chime could shatter the silence. There was no groaning, no rubbing of sleep from his eyes, no 5-minute snooze to cling to the warmth of the duvet. Izuku sat up. The duvet fell away from his chest. The room was cold. He had left the window cracked open despite the November chill, but he didn't shiver. His body registered the temperature, acknowledged the drop in degrees, and dismissed it as irrelevant data. He stood up and walked to the closet. The floorboards were cold under his bare feet. He opened the door and selected his running gear, a black tracksuit. He didn't choose the green one today. Green was too bright. Green was for the boy who wanted to be seen. Black was practical. Black absorbed light. He dressed in silence. Left leg. Right leg. Zip up. Socks. Shoes. He tied his laces with military precision, ensuring the tension was equal on both feet to prevent slippage during high-velocity turns. He checked his reflection in the small mirror on the inside of the closet door. The face looking back was familiar, yet foreign. The freckles were there, the unruly hair was there, but the geometry of his expression had shifted. His jaw was set in a permanent line of tension. His eyes, usually wide and swimming with nervous energy, were narrowed, focused on a point 1,000 miles away. The dark circles under them looked like bruises. System check complete, he thought. Operational. He grabbed a protein bar from a box on his desk, unwrapped it, and ate it in 3 bites. He didn't taste the chocolate peanut butter flavor. It was just fuel. Calories. Carbon. Hydrogen. Oxygen. Energy to burn. He opened his door and stepped into the hallway. The dorms were silent. It was too early for even Ida to be awake. The air in the corridor was stale, recycling the breath of 20 sleeping teenagers. Izuku moved to the stairwell. He didn't take the elevator. Elevators made him wait. He ran down the stairs, skipping 2 steps at a time, his landing silent, absorbed by the balls of his feet. He burst out of the front doors of Heights Alliance into the pre-dawn gray. The air bit at his lungs, sharp and metallic. Begin. He started to run. The run was not a leisurely jog. It was a punishment. Izuku set a pace that would have killed a civilian. He wasn't using full cal, that was for combat, but he was pushing his base physical stats to their absolute limit. His lungs burned. His quadriceps screamed with lactic acid. The cold wind whipped against his face, stinging his eyes. He welcomed the pain. Pain was data. Pain meant the machine was working. Pain was loud enough to drown out the static. He ran the perimeter of the UA campus. Once. Twice. 3 times. As he ran, his mind drifted, not into daydreams, but into calculations. If I increase my base speed by 5%, my reaction time at 8% full cal effectively doubles due to the momentum coefficient. I need to improve my cornering. I lost 0.4 seconds on that last turn. 0.4 seconds. The number echoed in his head. The ceiling collapsed in 1.2 seconds. Reaction time was 0.5. Travel time was 0.8. Too slow. If I had been 0.4 seconds faster. He sprinted harder. The gravel crunched violently under his soles. He was running so fast the scenery blurred into streaks of gray and brown. He wasn't running towards something anymore. He was running away from the math of his own failure. By the time he finished, the sun was beginning to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in colors that were too beautiful for how he felt. He stopped at the dorm entrance, his chest heaving, sweat freezing on his skin. He checked his watch. 15 kilometers. 48 minutes. Acceptable. But not enough. He walked inside to shower. He scrubbed his skin until it was red, washing away the sweat, trying to wash away the phantom sensation of dust. He dressed in his school uniform. The tie, which he usually struggled with, he knotted perfectly on the first try. His hands were steady, too steady. The common room was buzzing with the morning rush when Izuku finally came downstairs with his bag. The smell of miso soup and toast filled the air. Morning, Midoriya! Kirishima called out from the table, a piece of toast hanging from his mouth. He offered a thumbs up, though his eyes were searching, worried. Good morning, Izuku said. His voice was flat. It didn't project. It just existed. He walked to the kitchen counter. Bakugo was there, chopping scallions with aggressive precision. The blonde paused as Izuku approached. For a second, the chopping stopped. The only sound was the bubbling of a pot. Bakugo didn't look at him, but he shifted slightly, making space. A silent concession. Izuku grabbed a carton of milk and an apple. Midoriya-chan, Tsuya Ajiri said, hopping over. Are you not having a warm breakfast? Sato-chan made rice. I'm fine, Ajiri-san. This is enough. Tsu, she corrected gently. Call me Tsu, remember? Izuku paused. He looked at her. He remembered. He remembered the USJ. He remembered promising to be friends. But Tsu was a nickname. It implied intimacy. It implied a bond. Bonds were heavy. Bonds were things that broke when buildings fell. Right. Ajiri-san, he repeated, oblivious to the hurt that flickered across her face. He turned and walked toward the door. Midoriya-kun! Tenya Ida intercepted him, his arms chopping the air, though with less vigor than usual. We usually walk to class together. As a group. It fosters camaraderie and ensures punctuality. I need to stop by the library before homeroom, Izuku lied. He didn't blink. I'll see you there. He walked around Ida. He didn't look back. If he had, he would have seen Uraraka gripping her skirt, her eyes watering, or Todoroki staring at his retreating back with a cold, knowing recognition. He walked to the main building alone. The walk was efficient. He counted the steps. Class 1A. The Hero Course. The Crucible of Dreams. Izuku sat at his desk. He took out his textbook, his notebook, and his pencil case. He arranged them in a perfect grid. Parallel lines. Right angles. Aizawa entered the room a moment later, sliding into his sleeping bag like a caterpillar retreating into a cocoon, then immediately unzipping it to stand at the podium. He looked more tired than usual. His eyes lingered on Izuku for a fraction of a second before addressing the class. Homeroom is starting. Quiet down, the class settled. Today, we have English in the morning, followed by modern hero art history. In the afternoon, we have hero basic training. All Might will be observing, but I will be running the session. A ripple of excitement usually went through the class at the mention of hero training. Today, the energy was muted. They were all aware of the black hole in the second row. President Mike burst in for English a few minutes later. Hello listeners. Are you ready to conjugate some verbs? Usually, Izuku was the first to answer. He would mutter the answers under his breath, hand shooting up, eager to please, eager to learn. Okay. Who can tell me the past participle of to strive? Mike shouted, pointing a finger gun at the class. Silence. Yayorozu raised her hand gracefully. Midoriya! Mike pivoted, pointing at Izuku instead. He was trying to engage him. Trying to spark a reaction. You know this one. Lay it on me, yeah? Izuku stood up. Striven. He sat down. No stutter. No, I think it's... No smile. Mike blinked behind his shades. The energy in the room dropped. Correct. Yeah. Gold star listener. The day dragged on like this. During Hero Art History with Midnight, she discussed the ethical implications of collateral damage during the Golden Age. It was a heavy topic given the circumstances. Heroes must prioritize the safety of the public over the capture of the villain, Midnight explained, her usual playfulness replaced by a somber tone. However, in high-stakes situations, property damage is often unavoidable. She looked at the class. Can anyone give me an example of a situation where property damage is acceptable? Izuku's hand went up. It moved like a piston. Midoriya? When the structural integrity of the environment is already compromised, Izuku said. His voice was monotone, reciting facts from a textbook he seemed to be reading in his mind. Or when the villain poses an immediate existential threat to a population center greater than 10,000 people. Section 12. Article 4 of the Hero Public Safety Commission Guidelines. That is, technically correct, Midnight said, frowning slightly. But we also have to consider the emotional impact. The loss of homes. The loss of sanctuaries. Sanctuaries are material, Izuku said. Lives are biological. The hierarchy is absolute. If destroying a home saves a biological life, the home is irrelevant. The class went dead silent. Deku. Uraraka whispered from 2 desks away. However, Izuku continued, staring at the blackboard, his eyes unseeing. If the hero fails to save the life and destroys the home, the operation is a net zero-sum failure. The hero has failed their primary directive. They are inefficient. He stopped talking. He didn't look around to see the horrified expressions of his classmates. He just picked up his pencil and wrote down, failure equals inefficiency. Lunch was a blur of noise that Izuku tuned out. He sat at the table with Ida, Uraraka, and Todoroki, but he might as well have been on the moon. So, Uraraka said, her voice overly bright, desperate. I heard they're adding a new obstacle course to the gym Gamma. That sounds fun, right? Indeed, Ida said, chopping his hand. It will be excellent for mobility training. They looked at Izuku. Midoriya? Todoroki nudged him gently. Izuku looked up from his bowl of udon. He had eaten exactly 60% of it. The Gamma Gym has variable terrain. It's useful for quirk application. Right. So, do you want to partner up if we go? Uraraka asked. I will train alone, Izuku said. Oh. But team building is important too. Teams require synchronization, Izuku said. I am currently recalibrating my fighting style. I would be a liability to a partner until the adjustments are complete. Recalibrating? Todoroki asked, narrowing his eyes. Midoriya, you're not a robot. Izuku looked at Todoroki. For a second, the mask slipped, and something incredibly weary and old looked out from behind Izuku's green eyes. It hurts less if I am, he whispered. Before Todoroki could respond, the bell rang. Izuku stood up, took his tray, and walked away. Afternoon. Hero Basic Training. The locker room was filled with the sounds of zippers, Velcro, and teenage banter. But around locker number 18, there was a zone of silence. Izuku pulled on his costume. He looked at the mask, the one with the long ears that mimicked All Might's hair smile. He stared at it for a long moment. It looks stupid, he thought. It's a caricature. He didn't put the mask on. He left it in the locker. He pulled on his gloves, the Zeta bracers that Hatsum had designed to reduce the strain on his arms. He tightened the straps until they dug into his skin, tighter. Secure. He walked out into the tunnel leading to Ground Beta. The sunlight was blinding as they emerged into the mock city. Aizawa stood in the center of the street, flanked by All Might. All Might looked nervous. He kept glancing at Izuku, his smile twitching. He gave a small wave. Izuku didn't wave back. He stood at attention, feet shoulder-width apart, hands at his sides. Today's exercise is combat and capture, Aizawa announced, his voice amplified by a speaker system. We will be doing 2-on-2 battles. One team are the heroes, one team are the villains. Heroes must capture the villains or secure the nuclear weapon. Villains must capture the heroes or protect the weapon until time runs out. Aizawa held up a box. Draw lots. Izuku drew a slip of paper. Team A hero. Who is Team A? Aizawa asked. Shoji raised his hand. I am. Izuku nodded to the tall, multi-armed boy. Shoji-kun. Midoriya, Shoji nodded back. Let's do our best. And the villain team? Aizawa asked. Bakugo stepped forward, a feral grin on his face, though it didn't reach his eyes. Me. And beside him, Kirishima slammed his fists together. And me. Let's go. Aizawa paused. Bakugo and Kirishima versus Midoriya and Shoji. It was a volatile mix. He glanced at All Might, who looked worried. Very well, Aizawa said. Team A heroes versus Team B villains. Everyone else, to the observation room. The match starts in 10 minutes. Ground Beta. The building. Bakugo and Kirishima were on the 5th floor, guarding the papier-mâché bomb. So, Bakugo, Kirishima said, adjusting his mask. Midoriya, he's been acting weird, huh? Bakugo paced around the room. He's not weird. He's broken. You think he's gonna be okay to fight? Maybe we should go easy on him? Bakugo stopped. He turned to Kirishima, his eyes blazing. If you go easy on him, he'll kill you. What? Dude, it's Midoriya. He's super nice. That wasn't Midoriya in the classroom today, Bakugo growled. That was something else. Keep your guard up, shitty hair. I'm serious. A buzzer sounded. Start. Outside the building. What is the plan? Shoji asked, transforming 2 of his tentacles into ears to scan for sounds. Bakugo will likely attack directly, Izuku said. His voice was low, rapid. Kirishima will guard the bomb. Bakugo's ego demands he crush me. He'll come to the ground floor. So we avoid him? No, Izuku said. He rolled his neck. A crack echoed in the empty street. We engage. You go for the bomb. Use the exterior. Climb to the 5th floor. I will neutralize Bakugo. Neutralize? Shoji hesitated. Midoriya, Bakugo is strong. You should just distract him. Go, Izuku ordered. Before Shoji could argue, Izuku vanished. He didn't wind up. He didn't crouch. He just activated full cowl, green lightning sparking violently around his body, and exploded forward. He hit the front doors of the building. He didn't open them. He kicked them off their hinges. Boom! He was inside. The lobby was dark. Dekawa! An explosion lit up the stairwell. Bakugo came flying down, propelled by blasts from his palms. He was a missile of rage and fire. Die! Bakugo swung a massive right hook, explosions popping along his forearm. Usually Izuku would analyze. Right hook. Wide swing. He's leading with his right. He would dodge, maybe try a throw. This time, Izuku didn't dodge. He stepped into the guard. He took the explosion. The blast hit his left shoulder, searing the fabric of his costume, burning skin. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't make a sound. While Bakugo was still following through with the momentum of the swing, Izuku drove his right fist into Bakugo's solar plexus. It wasn't a smash. It was a short, brutal jab powered by 8%. Thwack! The air left Bakugo's lungs instantly. His eyes bulged. He gagged, doubling over. Izuku didn't stop to ask if he was okay. He didn't stop to apologize. He grabbed the back of Bakugo's head and slammed his knee into Bakugo's face. Crack! Bakugo's mask shattered. He went limp, dropping to the floor, nose bleeding profusely. In the observation room, the class gasped. Whoa! That was brutal! Kaminari yelled. He didn't even hesitate, Ojiro noted, looking disturbed. He just took him apart. On the screen, Izuku stood over Bakugo. He looked down at his childhood friend. Threat neutralized. Proceed to objective. He turned and sprinted up the stairs. 5th floor. Kirishima heard the commotion downstairs. Bakugo? Silence. Crap. Kirishima hardened his skin. Come on, Midoriya. I'm ready for you. The door to the room didn't open. The floor beneath Kirishima exploded. Izuku came up through the concrete, using a Manchester smash to breach the floor from below. Debris flew everywhere. Kirishima raised his arms to block. Red counter. Izuku landed amidst the dust. He saw Kirishima. Hardening quirk. Blunt force is inefficient. Joints are vulnerable. Eyes are vulnerable. Izuku lunged. Whoa, hold on! Kirishima shouted, throwing a punch. Izuku ducked under the punch. He moved like water, cold, rushing water. He got inside Kirishima's reach. He grabbed Kirishima's wrist. He didn't pull, he twisted. He applied torque against the natural rotation of the joint. Ack! Hey! Kirishima yelled, his hardening cracking at the wrist from the sheer pressure. Izuku swept Kirishima's legs. As Kirishima fell, Izuku didn't let go of the arm. He pinned Kirishima to the ground, knee on his chest, wrenching the arm behind his back to a breaking point. Yield, Izuku said. Midoriya! It's me! You're gonna break my arm! Yield, Izuku repeated. He applied more pressure. Okay. Okay. I give up! Izuku released him instantly. He stood up, walked over to the papier-mâché bomb, and touched it. Hero team wins. The buzzer sounded. Izuku stood there, chest heaving slightly. His shoulder was smoking from Bakugo's blast. His knuckles were bruised. Kirishima sat up, nursing his arm. He looked at Izuku with wide, fearful eyes. Dude, what was that? You could have snapped my shoulder. Izuku looked at him. You were the villain. If I didn't incapacitate you, you could have detonated the weapon. I chose the most efficient path to victory. We're friends. We're practicing. Villains don't practice, Izuku said. Shoji climbed in through the window a moment later. Midoriya? I heard the oh. You won? Mission complete, Izuku said. He walked past Kirishima, past the bomb, and headed for the exit, the teacher's lounge. 1 hour later, Izuku sat on a chair. Aizawa sat on the edge of his desk. The room was dim. Do you know why I called you here? Aizawa asked. Because of my performance in the exercise, Izuku replied. He was sitting with perfect posture, hands on his knees. Your performance was flawless, technically, Aizawa said. You took down Bakugo in under 10 seconds. You secured the objective. But your conduct, Aizawa leaned forward. You let yourself get hit by an explosion just to close the distance. You nearly dislocated Kirishima's shoulder. I calculated the damage, Izuku said. The burn is superficial. Kirishima's hardening would have protected his bone structure from a fracture unless I applied 15% more force. I was in control. That's not the point, Aizawa snapped. His scarf floated slightly, his hair rising. You are fighting like you don't care what happens to your body. You are fighting like a machine. Machines are efficient, Izuku said. Machines break. Aizawa slammed his hand on the desk. And they don't care when they break. But you are a human being, Midoriya. You have a life to live outside of this job. Do I? Izuku looked up. The question was genuine. My mother is dead, Izuku said. The words fell like stones. Because I was too slow. Because I was too careful. Because I was worrying about the building structure instead of just moving. Midoriya, you talk about self-preservation, sensei. But what is the point of preserving myself if the people I'm supposed to save die? Izuku stood up. For the first time all day, the static in his head swirled into something hot. Something angry. I have the greatest power in the world, Izuku said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. And I used it gently. I used it with a smile. And it wasn't enough. He looked at his hands, scarred, crooked, strong. If I have to break my bones to save someone, I'll break them. If I have to stop feeling to do my job, I'll stop feeling. Because the alternative. His voice cracked. The mask of the machine slipped, revealing the terrified, grieving boy underneath. The alternative is silence. And I can't handle the silence anymore. Aizawa looked at his student. He saw the logic of trauma. He saw the dangerous path Izuku was walking, the path of the martyr, the weapon. It was the same path All Might had walked, destroying his body for the sake of peace. But Aizawa wasn't All Might. He didn't believe in martyrs. You're wrong, Aizawa said softly. Izuku blinked. Saving people isn't just about the end result, Aizawa said. It's about how you save them. If you save someone by becoming a monster, you haven't saved them. You've just scared them. You saw Kirishima's face. He wasn't relieved. He was terrified of you. Izuku looked away. Better terrified and alive than comforted and dead. Is that what Inko would have wanted? Izuku flinched. The name was a physical blow. Don't, Izuku whispered. Don't use her against me. I'm not. I'm asking you a question. Would your mother want you to become a meat shield? A robot? She would want me to be a hero, Izuku said, his voice turning cold again. The walls slammed back up. The machine rebooted. And heroes win. He bowed stiffly. May I be excused, sensei? I have homework to complete. Aizawa watched him. He saw the door closing in the boy's heart. He realized that this wasn't something he could fix with a lecture. This was a deep, infected wound that was going to require surgery. Go, Aizawa said. Izuku turned and walked out. Aizawa slumped back against his desk. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed the number. Tashinori, Aizawa said when the line connected. We have a problem. A big one. The dorms. Night. Izuku sat at his desk. The only light came from the small desk lamp. He opened a new notebook. The cover was black. He didn't write hero analysis for the future. He wrote optimization protocols. He turned the page. Entry 1. Emotion is a variable. Variables create unpredictability. Unpredictability leads to failure. Objective. Eliminate the variable. He stared at the words. The static hummed in his ears, a comforting, numbing blanket. He picked up his pen and began to write. He wrote about maximizing torque. He wrote about pain suppression techniques. He wrote about the structural weaknesses of the villain anatomy. Outside, the wind howled against the window. Inside, the only sound was the scratching of the pen, moving with mechanical, relentless rhythm across the paper. Scratch. 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 The machine was running. And it would not stop. Katsuki Bakugo did not sleep. Sleep was a weakness. Sleep was where the brain replayed the tapes it refused to process during the daylight hours. For Katsuki, the tape loop was currently stuck on a singular, high-definition memory from 10 years ago. A warm kitchen. The smell of spicy curry. A small, round woman with green hair laughing as a 4-year-old Katsuki tried to eat a pepper whole to prove he was tough. She didn't scold him. She just had a glass of milk ready before the burn even hit his tongue. You're so brave, Katsuki-kun. But remember, strong heroes know when to cool down too. Anti-Inko. Katsuki stared at the ceiling of his dorm room. It was 3 a.m. The silence of Heights Alliance was oppressive. Usually, silence meant peace. Now, silence felt like an accusation. He rolled over, burying his face in his pillow, gritting his teeth until his jaw ached. He hated this. He hated the heavy atmosphere that had settled over Class 1A like a lead blanket. He hated the way round-face, Uraraka, looked like she was about to cry every time she looked at the green couch in the common room. He hated the way Icy Hot, Todoroki, had stopped making snide comments and just stared into the middle distance. But mostly, he hated Deku, not the old hate. The old hate was simple. It was combustible. It was based on the incomprehensible fact that a pebble kept trying to stand in the way of a boulder. This new hate was a sickening, churning feeling in his gut. It was a reaction to seeing something unnatural. Deku wasn't crying. Deku wasn't muttering. Deku wasn't Deku. The nerd had become a ghost. A walking, talking, note-taking ghost with dead eyes. And every time Katsuki looked at him, he didn't see the rival he wanted to crush. He saw Inko Midoriya's corpse. Damn it, Katsuki hissed into the darkness. Small sparks popped against his palm, singeing the pillowcase. He sat up, kicking the sheets off. The guilt was a physical weight on his chest. It wasn't logical, Katsuki knew that. He hadn't dropped the building. He hadn't been the villain, but logic had no place in the swirling storm of his emotions. He had bullied her son for a decade. He had told him to take a swan dive off a roof. He had made her cry more times than he could count because her son came home with burns and bruises that Katsuki put there, and now she was gone. And he could never, ever make it right. He needed to hit something. The gym was empty at this hour, or so Katsuki thought. He walked into Gym Gamma, his towel slung over his shoulder, wearing a black tank top and shorts. He wanted to blow up some cement pillars. He wanted to sweat until he was too dehydrated to think, but the gym wasn't empty. In the center of the vast concrete floor, a figure was moving. It was Izuku. He wasn't practicing smashes. He wasn't practicing shoot-style kicks. He was doing something repetitive. Mechanical. He was standing in front of a heavy punching bag. Thwack. Left jab. Thwack. Right jab. Thwack. Left hook. The rhythm was metronomic. There was no grunt of exertion. No smash. Yelled at the point of impact. Just the dull, wet sound of fist meeting leather. Katsuki stood in the shadows of the entrance, watching. He noticed Izuku wasn't using one for all. No green lightning. Just raw muscle. Izuku's knuckles were bleeding. The bandages he wore were stained red, but he didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. Thwack. 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 It was the most irritating sound Katsuki had ever heard. Old Katsuki barked, stepping into the light. You trying to break your hands again, nerd? Recovery girl isn't gonna fix you if you do it on purpose. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't turn around. Thwack. I'm talking to you. Katsuki marched forward. The anger flared up, hot and familiar, a welcome relief from the guilt. Don't ignore me. Thwack. Katsuki reached out and grabbed Izuku's shoulder, yanking him back. I said stop. Izuku spun with the momentum of the pull. He didn't stumble. He didn't look surprised. He just looked at Katsuki. Those eyes. Katsuki involuntarily took a step back. He had seen fear in those eyes. He had seen defiance. He had seen admiration. He had never seen nothing. It was like looking into a deep, stagnant well. There was no light reflected there. Just a void. I am training, Izuku said. His voice was hoarse, likely from dehydration. Training? You're beating meat against a bag at 3 a.m, Katsuki yelled. That's not training, that's self-harm, you idiot. It builds callus density, Izuku replied calmly. He turned back to the bag. Don't you turn your back on me. Katsuki exploded. He set off a blast against the side of the punching bag, incinerating the leather and sending sand spilling onto the floor. Look at me. Izuku looked at the pile of sand. That was inefficient. Now the equipment is ruined. I don't care about the damn bag. Katsuki grabbed Izuku by the collar of his sweaty t-shirt. He slammed him against a concrete pillar. I care about you acting like a damn robot. Scream. Cry. Hit me. Do something. Izuku hung in his grip, limp. He didn't struggle. He didn't try to push Katsuki away. Why? Izuku asked. Because it's pissing me off. Katsuki roared, his face inches from Izuku's. You're walking around like you're dead. If you're gonna be a hero, act like one. And he wouldn't want. Katsuki stopped. He hadn't meant to say it. The name slipped out. The air in the gym dropped 10 degrees. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed Izuku's face. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, sharp annoyance. Like a scientist whose experiment had been bumped. Don't talk about her, Izuku said. I'll talk about whatever I want. Katsuki doubled down, desperate for a reaction. She's dead, Deku. She's dead and you're here acting like a zombie. Does it not hurt? Do you not care? He was baiting him. He was being cruel. He knew it. But he needed the explosion. He needed Deku to snap so that things could go back to normal. So that the world would make sense again. Izuku slowly reached up and took hold of Katsuki's wrists. His grip was iron. It hurts, Izuku said softly. It hurts every second. It's a frequency in my head that never stops screaming. He squeezed. Katsuki winced. The grip was strong, too strong without a quirk. But screaming back doesn't fix the building, Izuku continued. Crying doesn't reverse time. Emotion is energy. Energy can be wasted, or it can be directed. He shoved Katsuki. It wasn't a violent shove, just a firm dismissal. Katsuki stumbled back, releasing him. I am done wasting energy on you, Kaken. Izuku walked away. He walked out of the gym, leaving Katsuki standing alone amidst the spilled sand and the echo of a nickname that used to sound like an insult, but now sounded like a dismissal. Katsuki stared at his hands. They were trembling. Damn it, he whispered. Damn it all to hell. Morning. The classroom. Izuku sat at his desk. He was awake, showered, and dressed perfectly. While the rest of the class chattered about the upcoming cultural festival, a topic Aizawa had floated to boost morale, Izuku was working. He wasn't taking notes on heroes. He was analyzing a villain. In front of him lay a notebook. Analysis number 14. But the cover was taped over with black duct tape. On the open page, a sketch was drawn in meticulous detail. A man with a ragged coat. Wild eyes. Hands that seemed to vibrate. Subject, unknown villain, media designation, the deconstructionist. Quirk, matter destabilization? Vibration resonance? Range, contact to approximate 50 meters via medium transfer. Incident, Musuda for residential collapse. Casualties, 14 dead, 32 injured. Izuku stared at the sketch. He replayed the memory. The villain's eyes. They were bloodshot. The pupils were dilated to pinpoints. The veins in his neck were black and bulging, symptoms of trigger. Izuku wrote the word down. Trigger, the drug that boosted quirks. It originated in Naruhata, but distribution had spread. Why would a random villain in a residential area be on high-grade trigger? He wasn't robbing a bank. He wasn't fighting a hero. He was just destroying. It was a test run. Or a disposal. Midoriya? Izuku didn't look up. Yes, Yayorosa-san? Momo Yayorosa stood by his desk. She looked concerned. Mr. Aizawa is asking for the permission slips for the career counseling. You haven't turned yours in. I will turn it in, Izuku said. Also, are you okay? You were muttering. But, not like usual. I am fine. If you need help with the missed notes from, I have the notes, Izuku interrupted. He finally looked up. Thank you for your concern. It is unnecessary. Momo recoiled slightly at the coldness. Oh. Okay. Sorry to disturb you. She walked away, glancing back at him. Izuku returned to his notebook. He needed more data. The news reports were superficial. They focused on the tragedy, the victims, the delayed response of the heroes. They didn't focus on the perpetrator. The police had him. Detective Tsukachi would have the interrogation file. Izuku checked his watch. Lunch break was in 2 hours. He could make it to the station and back if he skipped lunch and used 5% full cowl to travel across the rooftops. But he couldn't just walk into the interrogation room. He needed a reason. He looked at his hand. The hand that had failed to hold the beam. I am the victim's son. I have rights. A plan formed. It wasn't a hero's plan. It was a manipulator's plan. Musudafa Police Precinct. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi looked exhausted. The mountain of paperwork on his desk was threatening to cause a landslide. The collapse incident was a nightmare of liability, insurance claims, and villain processing. A knock on his office door. Come in. The door opened. Tsukachi blinked. Midoriya-kun? Standing there was All Might's successor. The boy looked different. He was wearing his UA uniform, but he looked thinner. Sharper. Detective Tsukachi. Izuku bowed deeply. I apologize for the intrusion. No intrusion at all. Tsukachi stood up, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. I saw Tashinori. I heard about your mother. Midoriya, I can't express how sorry I am. Izuku sat down. He didn't lean back. He sat on the edge of the chair, hands clasped tightly in his lap. He looked down. Thank you, detective. It's been hard. Izuku's voice wavered. He hunched his shoulders. To Tsukachi, he looked like a grieving child trying to hold it together. Perfect, Izuku thought coldly. Sympathy established. I came because I needed to ask about her personal effects, Izuku said, keeping his voice small. There was a necklace she wore. I didn't see it in the box you sent. I thought, maybe it was logged in evidence. If she was found near him, Tsukachi sighed, his face softening with pity. Ah, I see. Personal effects from the immediate vicinity of the villain capture zone are still being processed. It's a mess, to be honest. Could I check the log? Izuku looked up, eyes wide and glistening. He forced tears to well up. Please. It's the only thing I have left of her grandmother's. It was a lie. Inko didn't wear a necklace from her grandmother. Tsukachi hesitated. Civilians weren't supposed to see the evidence logs. But this was All Might's student. This was a victim. A kid who had lost everything. I shouldn't, Tsukachi muttered. But okay. Let me pull up the file on the screen. You can look at the item list. Just the item list. Thank you, detective. You're very kind. Tsukachi turned his monitor so Izuku could see. He clicked open the file. Case 4092 Villain, Akihiro, Goro. Izuku leaned in. He didn't look at the item list. His eyes scanned the sidebar, the interrogation summary, the toxicology report. He read fast. Faster than Tsukachi realized. Villain name, Quakefist formerly. Identity, Goro Akihiro, age 34. Affiliation, low-level thug for the Red Lotus Yakuza remnant. Toxicology, high concentrations of trigger beta. Origin of drug, suspected distribution hub in the Kamino/Ward 4 border. Warehouse district. Statement, they told me it would make me a king. They said try it on the housing block. They said no heroes patrol there on Sundays. Got you, Izuku thought. I don't see the necklace, Izuku said, his voice trembling again. I'm sorry, Midoriya, Tsukachi said gently. It might be lost in the rubble. We can keep looking. It's okay. Izuku wiped his eyes. Thank you for letting me try. He stood up. Midoriya, Tsukachi said as Izuku reached the door. If you need anything at all. I have everything I need, Izuku said. He walked out of the station. As soon as the door closed behind him, the slumped posture vanished. The tears evaporated. His face settled back into the mask of the machine. Ward 4. Warehouse District. Red Lotus. He had a target. The dorms. Evening. The atmosphere in the common room was strained. Everyone was trying to act normal, but normal felt like a distant memory. Izuku walked through the front door. Midoriya! Ida called out. You missed lunch. And the afternoon homeroom. Where have you been? I had an appointment, Izuku said, heading for the stairs. You can't just leave campus. Ida chopped the air. It is against protocol, especially with the current safety levels. Ida, leave him alone, Todoroki said quietly from the couch. But as class representative, it is my duty to. Izuku stopped on the stairs. He turned to look at Ida. "I am back now," Izuku said. "My safety is not compromised." He continued up the stairs. Inside his room, Izuku locked the door. He moved the black notebook to the center of his desk. He opened a map of Muzurifu on his laptop. He zoomed in on Ward 4. It was an industrial zone. Abandoned factories, shipping containers, shadows. A place where heroes rarely went because the crime was petty and the paperwork was heavy. They said no heroes patrol there on Sundays. That sentence burned in his mind. Because no heroes patrolled there, a test subject was sent to a safe residential area nearby. His home. The system had holes. The heroes chased the big villains, the Shigarakis, the all-for-ones. But the cracks were where the filth accumulated. And the filth had spilled over and drowned his mother. Izuku stood up. He walked to his closet. He pulled out his hero costume case. He opened it. The alpha suit. The green jumpsuit, the white gloves, the red boots. The suit his mother had bought him. He touched the fabric. "I'm sorry, Izuku. It's not much, but I did my best." He couldn't wear this. Not tonight. This suit was for the boy who saved people with a smile. This suit was for the symbol of peace's successor. Tonight, he wasn't a successor. He was a consequence. He reached deeper into the closet. He pulled out older gear. A dark green hoodie. Black cargo pants with reinforced knees. His iron-soled red boots. And the Zeta gauntlets he had taken from the support lab for maintenance. He put on the hoodie. He pulled the hood up. He looked in the mirror. He looked like a vigilante. He looked like the kind of person who hunted in the dark. Justice isn't waiting for the police to build a case, Izuku thought. Justice is stopping the source. He opened his window. He was on the second floor. Easy. He slipped out onto the balcony, closed the window silently, and leaped into the night. Ward 4. The warehouse district. It was raining again. The water slicked the rooftops, reflecting the neon signs of the distant city center. Here, the lights were few and flickering yellow. Izuku crouched on top of a shipping container. The rain soaked his hoodie, but he didn't feel the cold. He had been tracking the movement of unmarked vans for 2 hours. He had used his knowledge of logistics, gleaned from years of analyzing hero patrol routes and villain escape vectors, to pinpoint the hub, Warehouse 12. There were guards. 2 at the front, 1 patrolling the side. They weren't wearing costumes. They looked like Yakuza thugs. Suits, sunglasses at night, visible mutations. 1 had a shark head. 1 had fingers that were lighter fluid nozzles. Izuku analyzed them. Shark head, likely enhanced strength, weak to sensory overload, gills/eyes. Lighter fingers, range limited, volatile. He dropped down into the alleyway. He didn't announce himself. He didn't shout, "Stop right there, villain." He moved. He came up behind the shark head thug. Full call, 5%. He swept the thug's legs. As the man fell, Izuku chopped the back of his neck. Thud. Unconscious before he hit the ground, the lighter fingers thug turned. "Hey! Who's TH?" Izuku was already inside his guard. He grabbed the thug's fingers, squeezing them shut to prevent ignition. He drove a knee into the man's stomach. The thug doubled over, gasping. Izuku slammed his forehead against the thug's. Lights out. Silence. Izuku dragged the bodies into the shadows. He checked their pockets. A keycard. He walked to the side door. He swiped the card. Beep. Green light. He stepped inside. The warehouse was massive. It was a drug lab. Vats of chemicals bubbled. Conveyor belts moved vials of red liquid. Trigger. There were about 20 men inside. Some were packing crates. Some were guarding the catwalks. And in the center, supervising the operation, was a man in a white suit. He had 4 arms. Izuku recognized him from a Hero News report 3 years ago. Muscular? No. Too small. A lieutenant. Izuku hid behind a stack of crates. He watched. Hurry it up. The 4-armed man shouted. The shipment goes out to the lab tomorrow. Shigaraki pays top dollar for this unstable batch. Shigaraki. The name sent a jolt of electricity through Izuku. This wasn't just a random gang. This was the supply line for the League of Villains. The people who attacked USJ. The people who kidnapped Bakugo. The people who created the chaos that eventually led to this. It was all connected. Izuku felt the black whip energy stirring inside him. It wasn't the jagged, uncontrollable burst from his nightmare. It was responding to his intent. Capture. Restrain. Hurt. He knew he should call the police. He knew he should call Aizawa. This was too big for one student, but if he called the police, they would set up a perimeter. They would negotiate. The villains might escape. Or they might destroy the evidence. Efficiency, Izuku told himself. Strike hard. Strike fast. He climbed up the racking, moving toward the catwalks. He was a shadow. A phantom. He positioned himself directly above the four-armed leader. He took a deep breath. The air smelled of chemicals and ozone. One for all, full cowl. 15%. He dropped. The fight. It wasn't a fight. It was an ambush. Izuku landed on the leader like a bomb. The metal catwalk groaned under the impact. The leader didn't even have time to scream before Izuku drove him into the ground. Boss! The minions shouted. Intruder! Kill him! Quirks flared. Fireballs, spikes, acid spit. Izuku moved. He was faster than them. He was faster than he had ever been because he wasn't hesitating. He wasn't thinking, is that too hard? Will he be okay? He was thinking, knee to the temple. Dislocate the shoulder. Shatter the knee. He dodged a stream of acid, vaulting off a crate. He shot out a tendril of black whip, thin, black, and crackling with red sparks. It wrapped around the acid spitter's neck. Izuku yanked. The villain flew across the room, slamming into a vat. What is this kid? One thug screamed, backing away. Is he a pro? Izuku landed in the center of the room. His hood was up, casting his face in shadow. Only his eyes were visible, glowing toxic green. The green lightning arced off him, tearing up the concrete floor. You sold the drugs, Izuku said. His voice was distorted, guttural. You sold the trigger to the man who destroyed the apartments. I don't know what you're talking about. A thug stammered. He destroyed my home, Izuku said. He took a step forward. The pressure in the room spiked. The glass vials on the conveyor belt shattered from the sheer intensity of his aura. He killed her. Izuku vanished. He reappeared in front of the thug. A punch to the gut. The thug folded. Another villain charged with a knife. Izuku didn't dodge. He caught the blade with his armored glove. He snapped the blade. Then he snapped the villain's wrist. It was a massacre of efficiency. Within 2 minutes, 18 men were on the ground, groaning or unconscious. Only the leader was left. He was struggling to stand up, his white suit stained with oil and blood. Stay back! The leader yelled, all 4 arms raised. Do you know who we work for? I don't care, Izuku said. He walked toward him. We have insurance. We have hostages. Izuku stopped. Hostages? The leader grinned, blood on his teeth. He pressed a button on a remote in his hand. A heavy metal door at the back of the warehouse slid open. Inside was a cage. And inside the cage were 3 people. A woman and 2 children. They looked terrified, huddled together. Civilians we picked up for testing, the leader sneered. If you take another step, I blow the charges on that cage. They'll be paste. Izuku froze. The scenario. It was the same scenario. A villain. A crumbling structure or a bomb. Hostages. Choose, the leader seemed to say. Izuku looked at the hostages. He saw the mother holding her children. He saw Inko. The static in his head screamed. Not again. Let them go, Izuku said. Back off. The leader yelled. Leave. And maybe I don't kill them. Izuku took a step back. He lowered his hands. The leader laughed. That's right, hero. Run away. You can't save everyone. The mockery hit Izuku like a physical slap. You can't save everyone. Something snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a final tether breaking. Izuku looked at the leader. He looked at the remote. Distance, 12 meters. Speed of thumb movement, 0.1 seconds. My speed at 20%, unknown. Risk of failure, high. Alternative, Izuku raised his hand. Black whip erupted. Not one tendril. 6. They writhed like angry snakes, I said. Izuku whispered, the one for all lightning turning a darker, muddier shade of green. Let them go. The leader flinched. I'll do it. Izuku didn't run. He didn't punch. He unleashed Black Whip. But he didn't aim for the villain. He aimed for the ceiling. The black tendrils shot up, smashing into the support lights, the heavy industrial fixtures hanging above the leader. Smash! Izuku yanked down. Tons of metal and glass rained down on the leader. The leader looked up, screamed, and tried to dodge. He dropped the remote. As the debris crashed down, burying the villain, Izuku was already moving. He sprinted past the cloud of dust. He slid to the remote, kicking it away. He reached the cage. He ripped the door off its hinges. Run, he told the mother. Go out the side door. Don't look back. The woman looked at him. She saw a boy in a hood, surrounded by darkness, with eyes that looked like broken glass. Thank you, she sobbed, grabbing her kids. They ran. Izuku turned back to the pile of debris. The leader was groaning underneath. He was alive, but barely. His legs were crushed. Izuku walked over to him. He stood over the broken villain. He felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just the cold confirmation that the threat was neutralized. He threatened a mother, Izuku thought. He threatened a family. He raised his foot. He hovered it over the villain's chest. A stomp here, with 5% power, would stop the heart. It would be easy. It would ensure he never hurt anyone again. Do it, a dark voice whispered. Finish the job. Midoriya! The shout came from the warehouse entrance. Izuku froze. He didn't turn around. He knew that voice. It wasn't All Might. It wasn't Aizawa. Get away from him, you damn nerd! Bakugo stood in the doorway. He was panting, wet from the rain, wearing his street clothes. He had followed him. Izuku slowly lowered his foot. He turned his head. He's neutralized, Kaken, Izuku said. Bakugo walked forward, stepping over the unconscious bodies of the thugs. He looked at the carnage. He looked at the broken leader under the debris. Then he looked at Izuku. Bakugo's face was pale. He saw what Izuku had almost done. He saw the line Izuku was standing on. We're leaving, Bakugo said. His voice wasn't a yell. It was shaking. The cops are coming. I called them. I found the source, Izuku said, pointing at the vats. It connects to the League. I don't care. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's arm. Look at yourself. You're not a hero right now. You're a monster. Izuku looked at his reflection in a puddle of spilled chemicals. The hood. The dark energy. The blood on his gloves. Maybe monsters are what we need, Izuku whispered, but he let Bakugo pull him away. He let Bakugo drag him out into the rain, leaving the warehouse of broken bodies behind. As they ran into the night, the sirens began to wail, but the silence in Izuku's head was louder than ever.